you ever been at a place where you have been functioning at full capacity? Have you ever been on a flight and before you start boarding, the attendant comes on the loudspeaker and reminds you that we are flying at full capacity today? And so you already have to prepare yourself that when you get on the plane, that you won't have any elbow room. There will not be an opportunity to stretch your legs or to lean over to the other seat because you're flying at full capacity. Some of us are living our lives today flying at full capacity. There's no wiggle room. My schedule is airtight. There's no place I can go. I don't have time to squeeze in a meeting because all of my time is accounted for. I'm at full capacity. Have you ever been at a place where you felt like you was just going to lose your mind for God? Have you ever been just desperate for him? I'm desperate because I'm at full capacity. I'm desperate because I don't have no place to turn and I can't really operate because I need him to operate through me. But before he can operate through me, I need him to operate on me. I'm desperate and I have nothing else to give. Have you ever had an opportunity where you've been in the presence of God and all you could do was jump up and shout and cry and lay on the floor? Have you ever had that experience? Be it in the church house or be it in the comfort of your own home where you just had to sprawl out and lay it all out for God. A lot of us have had these opportunities, but we've never had to do it in front of people. And this is where we find this woman today. Let me set the scene on today. We are in a house of a wealthy man. His name is Simon. And if you remember, Simon was previously healed because he had leprosy. And Simon is wealthy, and Simon has opened his doors for the Passover. And Simon lives in a nice mountain bungalow in Galilee. And we pick up our story on the Saturday before the crucifixion of Christ, 6 days before the Passover. And we're in a town called Bethany. And Bethany is about 2 miles from Jerusalem. Bethany was a place of love, and Jerusalem was considered to be a place of hate. But here we have this woman. And she traveled on down to Bethany. Bethany was also known as the house of affliction. It was known as love, but it was known also as the house of affliction. But this is also the place where Jesus had raised Lazarus from the dead. Are we seeing the connection even now? Are we seeing this woman? I can see her. She probably had a little limp because her hip hurt. But she traveled on down to Bethany because Bethany was called the place of love, but it was also the house of affliction, but it was also the place where Jesus had raised Lazarus from the dead. And I bet you in her mind, she was saying, well, if he did it for him, I'm almost positive he could do it for me. So I'm just going to go with my little limp. I'm just going to go and see. I'm just hoping. I'm just hoping. I'm just hoping. See, we are in our hope series. I'm just hoping But then there's Jesus. And Jesus is in Simon's house, and he's taking the opportunity to sit back, and he's enjoying this meal at this wealthy man's table. And can you imagine the wealthy man thinking that he did something for Jesus? Jesus, you're talking about Jesus who came down from heaven, and the streets are paved with gold, but you have this wealthy man who set a table before him and probably thought, oh, I'm showing him such a good time. Jesus was sitting back at the table, and he was sitting amongst the other teachers of the law. And can you imagine the teachers of the law thinking that they were so puffed up with all of their knowledge, and they're going back and forth discussing their theology and their philosophy. And Jesus is saying, I hold the keys of heaven in my hand, and they have no idea of what he is talking about, and they were all of these well-educated men, and here they are surrounded in all of this beautiful ambiance and fine dinnerware and beautiful tapestries. Can you see it? Can you see the table set? And can you hear the glasses clinking? And can you see the fine linens on the table? Have you ever been to a good dinner and it was just absolutely beautiful, be it at a restaurant or be it at someone's house, and they set the scene for you and it was gorgeous, the lighting was perfect. Your earrings matched the tapestry, and it was just beautiful. Everybody seemed to have a glow because Jesus was there, and they had an opportunity to have an exchange with Jesus. Even the dirt on the floor was glistening, and it looked like glitter. Can you imagine? And then this woman, she comes on in. And she comes. This woman, she came on down to Bethany. She came from Jerusalem. And she said, if this was the place where Jesus healed Lazarus, he got Lazarus up from the dead, and this is the house of affliction. This is this woman, and she came walking in from the back. Can you imagine this woman who was never invited to any of these types of things? She was never invited to a dinner party. She was never invited to anybody. Nobody ever wanted to see her with the lights on. Hello, somebody. Nobody ever invited her to a place. It was all right for them to invite you where you could go and the lights were off. Nobody had to even connect with you when the lights were on. It was okay. So she had never been invited to anything like this. And it was probably obvious that she did not belong there. Do you see her? When she comes into the doors of Mount Carmel, and she has on dirty, ripped jeans. Her shirt is a little see-through. And because of the rips in her jeans, we could see a little bit of her kneecap. She'd never been invited to a place like this. Not with the stained glass and the light shining through. She'd never been invited to a place like this. Not these kinds of events. But here she is. And she brings a special gift. Can you imagine her? This is the gift that she bought. This is the gift that she bought. We can learn something from this woman right here. She didn't show up empty-handed. Some of us are showing up to our worship experiences empty-handed. Some of us are showing up to a place where we say we're going to go meet God. and we're showing up empty-handed when the Bible gives us clear instruction that we should enter into his gates with worship and enter into his gates with praise. And here we are showing up empty-handed, don't have a praise on our lips. We coming with all types of complaints, and we came to the church house just to gossip and see our family and friends, and we're showing up empty-handed, the unmitigated gall that we have. The young people would say it like this: the audacity. Some of us has the audacity to show up to a place of worship empty-handed, but not this woman. This woman, she showed up. She bought a gift. And can you imagine her standing behind Jesus? The Bible says that she stood behind him. Most of us can't get close enough to the man and woman of God. But somehow this woman got behind Jesus. And she's standing there. The Bible says that she's crying, and she's crying almost uncontrollable tears. Why was she crying? Because she realized that her faith, that her hope had activated her faith. And her faith had made her move. And her faith had made her move so much that she got right in the presence of Jesus. How many of us has that testimony that our hope has activated our faith? And our faith have got us right in front of Jesus. I am not sure about anything, but I have hope for a few things. And that hope in that thing have activated my faith. And all of a sudden, my faith had me standing before Jesus, believing that it could happen, believing that I could have it, believing that it was already mine. And this is where we find this lady. Her hope was activated. And then her hope activated her faith. And her faith had her standing right behind Jesus. And she was crying. And in Luke 7:38, it says, and she stood behind him at his feet weeping. Now, she stood behind him at his feet weeping. Now, that must have been some crazy crying, because she cried so much that she had saturated his feet from behind. From behind, she saturated his feet. The Bible also says that she took her hair and she wiped his feet, and probably her hair was so damp with her tears. She saturated his feet from behind. Some of us need to find Jesus even in some compromising positions. Some of us are in compromising positions, and I'm not talking nasty. I'm saying that we are in compromising positions in our minds. We are in some compromising positions in our hearts. We have some things on our mind that we probably shouldn't have on our mind. We got some things in our heart that we need to deal with, and God needs to find us right here in an uncompromising position where we are weeping at his feet. Will you weep for Jesus? Will you weep? Will you weep? And Simon was at the head of the table, and he could see Jesus sitting closest to the door, and she stood behind him, and she was in a place of submission, because by this time she was already down at his feet. Some of us like to come into the church, and I know the word says come boldly, but that don't mean get beside yourself. Some of us need to just come in and just go ahead and lay down and lay down all of your stuff. And God said, if you lay down your stuff, then I can exchange your stuff for my stuff. Now she was in a place of reverence. She was in a place of respect. She was standing behind him, weeping, tears pouring from her eyes, and she was gasping in between the sobs. Have you ever been at a place with Jesus and you had an experience? You couldn't even give sentences. All you could do was sob because you know what's on your heart and he knows what's on your heart, and you can't say nothing. I want to know if you've had an experience. She began to wet his feet with her tears, and she wiped them with her hair. And as the tears from her eyes began to wet his feet, she was probably embarrassed, and she was like, oh my gosh, I've made a fool of myself. Have you ever been a place where you've made a complete fool of yourself? I know that I have said some things too fast, and it was just like toothpaste coming out of a tube. I made a fool of myself, but in this case, I'd rather make a fool out of myself for Jesus, because if you don't make a fool out of yourself for Jesus, whose fool are you going to be? That's what my pastor, that's what L.D. McGee would say. Whose fool are you going to be? I'd rather make a fool out of myself for Jesus than to be somebody else's fool. And here she is. She was probably embarrassed, looking for a towel, reaching for something, because here I am. I'm wiping the king's tears with my hair, and I look a mess, and I shouldn't even be here. Can you imagine the things going in her mind? I shouldn't even be here. I shouldn't even came. But my hope activated my faith, and my faith have me standing here before the Lord.